We'll call a meeting to order. Land acknowledgement.
We respectfully acknowledge that the County of Haliburton is located on Treaty 20 Michisagi territory and the traditional territory of the Michisagi and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. We acknowledge the shared presence of Indigenous nations throughout the area and recognize its original inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial.
Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. The agenda.
That the August 27th, 2025 Haliburton County Council agenda be approved.
If someone move, Councillor Carter, second by Councillor Danielson. All in favor? It's carried. This morning we have development charges presentation, Watson and Associates and Elizabeth. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Warden and Council. So just a bit of a preface for the presentation. The development charges background study kicked off in 2022, which included a presentation to Council by Peter and his team at Watson and Associates in July of that year. The presentation provided Council with an overview of development charges and the project in general. As it's been over 3 years since that initial presentation, we felt it would be beneficial to have Peter and Matt back this morning to refresh Council on development charges and the plan for the project moving forward, as it's officially restarted now that the growth strategy is complete. So with that, I will hand it over to Peter to begin the presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for the introduction and good morning, everyone. I do believe we have some slides to share and they're just coming up here. So to jump right in, as Council is aware, the county, along with all 4 area municipalities, is undertaking this development charges study, or what effectively are going to be 5 individual development charge studies. And so our firm has been engaged to complete that work, which ultimately will provide the county with an understanding of the future investments into infrastructure and service expansion that are required due to population and employment growth, and how that could be funded through development charges imposed on new development. And the brief presentation that I will provide this morning is intended to provide an overview of the development charges, what is involved in the study process. We will, of course, be back to report on the findings later on in the process as the study gets underway. Before I get into the rest of the presentation, and as I already mentioned in the introductory remarks, I did want to note that the study officially commenced about 3 years ago. However, it became clear very quickly that some further background work was needed first to get a handle on the population and the household and employment growth potential for the planning horizon. And so the development charges study was put on hold while the county completed a growth analysis report, which is also a foundational document to inform a future update of the county's official plan. And so with that growth analysis report now completed, we are resuming work on the development charges study. So if we could go to the next slide, please. And firstly, wanted to address the question, what are development charges? Development charges are a discretionary tool that's available to municipalities, and that can be used to fund capital investments into infrastructure expansion and upgrades that may be needed due to development. These charges are already used by many municipalities across the province to fund investments such as expansion of recreational facilities, upgrading road surfaces and widening roads to accommodate higher traffic volumes, expansion of water wastewater treatment plants, as well as extension of pipes to service new development areas, just to name a few examples. Now, developers may be required to place certain infrastructure within a plan of subdivision, such as internal roads or sidewalks, streetlights, and so on, and that is typically direct developer responsibility. Development charges, on the other hand, are used to fund the expansion of infrastructure that would be outside of a specific development. So, for example, outside of a particular plan of subdivision. And the enabling piece of legislation is the Development Charges Act, which also sets out what types of costs can be included and the process that must be followed by municipalities when establishing a development charge bylaw. We could go to the next slide, please. So there have been numerous amendments made to the Development Charges Act as well as the associated regulation over the past 5 to 6 years. Some of these changes have changed what can be included in the calculation. Some have changed the rules around which types of development actually pay a development charge versus being exempt, as well as when that development charge is paid. While other changes have introduced additional rules around the ongoing administration of a development charge bylaw and the reporting associated with that. Now, I won't go through the full history here, but just wanted to highlight that we continue to see the Development Charges Act evolve, and there are further changes expected to come into effect in the near future, as introduced most recently through Bill 17 in June. So we continue to monitor these changes, and we'll make sure that any adjustments to the methodology are reflected in our work and keep staff informed about the implications of those changes as we progress through the study process. So what's illustrated on the slide here, certainly as mentioned earlier, the Development Charges Act is quite prescriptive when it comes to the methodology that must be followed when calculating a development charge. And so this slide provides a high-level illustration highlighting the key aspects of the methodology. And so the process starts by identifying the anticipated amount, type, and location of development within a municipality. And this component will be directly informed by the growth analysis report that was completed earlier this year. Now, relative to that growth forecast, we then need to identify the increase in need for services that is expected to result from that growth. And typically this starts with as a relatively high-level assessment. For example, as the community grows, are we expecting to see an increase in traffic volumes that may require us to consider making some upgrades to the road network? Or as the population grows, are we expecting to see an increase in the demand for fire services due to higher call volumes or potentially due to higher buildings that might require different apparatus? So once that increase in need for services is identified, we then start looking at specific projects that would need to be completed in order to accommodate that increase in need for service demand. This results in the identification of capital costs that are associated with service expansion and upgrade projects. So for example, widening specific road segments or undertaking intersection improvements or expanding a fire station or building a new one or purchasing a ladder truck to expand service capacity in anticipation of taller buildings, for example. So we then have to observe some deductions as illustrated towards the bottom of the slide here, most notably if there are any grants or other external contributions that are expected towards the identified capital needs, those need to be deducted. Secondly, if any of the identified needs will provide a benefit to the existing community, then an appropriate share of the project cost needs to be deducted as well. So for example, if one of the projects is the reconstruction of a road that will include a widening, there is likely a benefit to the existing community as the road would have required a reconstruction at some point as part of its normal life cycle. And so it could be that only the incremental costs associated with the widening are included in the calculation. So once those deductions are made, that leaves us with the net capital costs to be included in the development charge calculation. And we then divide those net capital costs by the anticipated amount of development to calculate charges for different types of residential units based on average occupancy levels. And then on the non-residential side, the charge is typically a charge per square foot of gross floor area. So if we could go to the next slide then, summarized here are all of the services that are eligible for inclusion in a development charge as set out by the Development Charges Act. And we will be working through this list with county staff as well as with staff at each of the area municipalities to identify which of these services are relevant and where there is an increase in service demand that would be expected as a result of growth. And just to highlight the most common services that we see included, those would be water and wastewater, as well as services related to a highway, which would be generally roads and road-related infrastructure, as well as the facilities and equipment that's needed to service road infrastructure. Fire protection towards the bottom there on the left-hand side is another common service we see included. Ambulance, library, and then parks and recreation are a handful of the areas or services that we see most commonly included in development charge bylaws. And so if we could go to the next slide then, having looked at the full list of eligible services, this next slide here summarizes the costs that can be included in the calculation of a development charge. And so generally the scope is limited to capital costs, which can include constructing or improving buildings, purchasing and making improvements to land, as well as the acquisition of equipment and rolling stock, or in other words, vehicles. That being said, the Development Charges Act also allows for the inclusion of certain costs that may not be considered capital in the traditional sense, such as library circulation materials, various growth-related studies, such as master plans, servicing studies, as well as the development charges study itself. And then finally, to the extent that debt financing might be expected to pay for any of the capital costs that are included, the associated interest costs can be included in the calculation as well. Now, with the exception of transit, we can consider any planning horizon for these capital needs. So given that the growth analysis report looked at growth to 2051, we could potentially consider the capital needs over that long-term planning horizon. However, in some cases, the capital needs may be better understood over a shorter planning horizon, for example, 10 years. And so in those cases, we would limit the analysis to that. As already mentioned, capital costs must be reduced by grants, subsidies, and other contributions. And then also worth noting is that we can include costs that wouldn't be incurred directly by the county or the area municipalities, but others on their behalf. Now, on the next slide, just want to highlight that there are a few noteworthy items that cannot be included in the calculation of a development charge. Those include the acquisition of land for parks. That's excluded because there are provisions under the Planning Act that allow municipalities to collect land from developers or payments in lieu of parkland dedication. We also cannot include any vehicles or equipment that have an average useful life less than 7 years. Generally speaking, computer equipment is not eligible for inclusion in a development charge calculation unless that computer equipment is kind of integrated with service delivery or within another asset. So a good example would be computer equipment like tablets that might be integrated with an ambulance vehicles, for example. That's integral to the functioning of that asset, that vehicle, and so it could be included in that regard. And then finally, we recently saw the introduction of some wording in the legislation that might allow the province to exclude the eligibility of land within certain other service areas from being eligible for inclusion, but we haven't seen the province taken any steps to exclude land other than parkland from being eligible for inclusion in the development charge study at this point. So if we could go to the next slide then, one additional item I would like to mention, although this is getting a little bit into the technical details, is that the Development Charges Act requires us to measure any future increase in service relative to the historical level of service that has been provided over the past 15 years. And that historical level of service needs to be considered through two lenses, one being quantity and the other being quality. Now, quantity considers how much of a service has been provided historically. So, for example, how much recreational space per capita on average there has been over the past 15 years. Quality then looks at this through a financial lens in terms of what has been that investment historically in terms of replacement cost of assets providing services. And so we then take that average historical level of service for each service area, apply it to the amount of future population growth, in order to determine the level of investment that would theoretically be expected to maintain the historical level of service. And this then represents a cap, I would say, on how much we can include in the calculation of a development charge. And the overall intent here is to ensure that the development charge does not become a mechanism for funding increases to the level of service that's being provided. The development charge rather is intended to allow a municipality to maintain a level of service even as the population grows and service demands increase over time. So if we could go to the next slide then, in addition to the mathematical part of the development charge process, there are also some policy considerations that will be looked at, and we will certainly come back to that in more detail as the study progresses. For today, I just wanted to touch on the fact that there are certain statutory exemptions and discounts or reductions in place under the Development Charges Act. And so you'll see those listed on the left-hand side of the slide here, with some notable exemptions being for industrial expansions of industrial buildings up to 50% of the existing gross floor area. Those types of expansions don't pay a development charge. And that's, again, a statutory exemption. Additions to existing residential buildings generally don't pay. Municipalities and school boards don't pay development charges on anything that they're constructing, as well as a certain number of additional residential units can be added, or secondary dwelling units or accessory dwelling units can be added within existing or new residential dwellings without triggering a development charge. More recently, we also saw the introduction of exemptions for affordable residential units that meet certain affordability thresholds defined by the province. And then also in the future, we expect to see some exemptions for attainable residential units. That wording is already in the legislation, but they haven't yet defined what attainable will mean. So we're expecting some regulations around that in the future, as well as any not-for-profit housing developments are fully exempt from the development charges, and then universities receiving ongoing funding from the province are fully exempt as well. And then as you see towards the bottom of that left-hand side of the table here, certain types of development get discounts. So specifically rental housing development gets discounts off the full development charge rate based on the number of bedrooms within the respective units. And then for some types of development, there is a difference to when the development charges are determined. So for any developments proceeding through a site plan or a zoning bylaw amendment application, they have their development charges frozen at the rates that were in effect when that planning application was submitted to the municipality. So even though the building permit may not come for a couple of years after that, their rates are frozen in time at the rates that were in effect when that planning application was submitted. And then similarly for rental housing and institutional developments, they don't pay their full development charges payable at the time of building permit issuance, but over 6 annual installments. So additionally, municipalities have the ability to introduce discretionary exemption policies into their bylaws as well. And some common examples of exemptions that we see included in development charge bylaws are listed on the right-hand side of the slide here. Typically or commonly, we see exemptions for industrial development, agricultural, certain types of agricultural or farm developments, temporary structures, and then places of worship are, again, some common exemptions. That's, again, not to suggest that the county or any of the area municipalities would need to introduce these, and we will have those discussions a little bit later on in the process. Just wanted to highlight some examples of common ones we do see. On that note, it is important to note that any revenue shortfalls that may result from introducing exemptions or discounts cannot be made up by charging higher rates on other types of development. And so effectively that becomes a cost that needs to be borne by the taxpayers or water wastewater ratepayers, as the case may be, when those types of reductions or exemptions are introduced. So if we could go to the next slide then, just finally here to highlight the process that leads up to the adoption of a development charge bylaw. So first, a background study must be prepared, and so that's what we are commencing now. That background study ultimately needs to be published on the municipal websites at least 60 days prior to council considering approval of a development charge bylaw. Then following the release of the background study, we have to hold at least one public meeting, which gives the public an opportunity to comment on the proposed charges as well as any associated policies. And then finally, council would be in a position to consider the approval of a development charge bylaw. And a development charge bylaw can be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal for a period of 40 days. And then finally, a development charge bylaw has a maximum shelf life of 10 years, at which point a new background study would be completed, but also understanding that the bylaw can be amended or replaced earlier than the 10 years if needed. And so I think that concludes my presentation here. Again, we'll certainly be back as we start to get some of the draft findings coming out of this process to present those to council. But I would certainly be happy to take any questions that council may have at this time.
Thank you, Peter. Questions? Councillor Carter.
So I only have 30 or 40, so this should go quick. Look, in general, this process seems to be not, I know it's a one size fits all, and this is a very difficult area. But when you have small growing municipalities, this is kind of stacked against you. I'll just, as an example, if all of a sudden we were to start, building here, and you had a couple of subdivisions that were put in with a few hundred homes or whatever that might be, you might change your process for how you deal with waste. You may all of a sudden say, "Hey, we now have hundreds of homes to deal with. We don't have traffic management to be able to handle that at our waste transfer sites. We're going to start doing pickup." Which would be a perfectly normal thing to do, but that's not what you've been doing for the last 10 years, isn't that? And is that an improved service or whatever? So how are growing municipalities doing that, and particularly in light of the situation where we've never had development charges that I know of here, and we're going into them. So how do you handle that type of thing?
Yes, thank you for the question. So, in terms of services that have not been provided historically, certainly that would be very much a limiting factor because of that requirement to look at any future needs relative to that historical level of service that's been provided. So, if there has been no level of service provided in terms of collection of waste, for example, then we couldn't show that there's been any level of service provided, and therefore we couldn't include anything in a future development charge because any investments into that kind of service would be considered a improvement to the level of service under the legislation, right? I think in light of that, we did see some changes to the Development Charges Act several years ago that changed that requirement specifically for transit services because it did this historical service level calculation or consideration was a limiting factor for many municipalities in trying to include transit services and fund them, the expansion of them through development charges. And so the province changed the rules around transit so that the requirement is not to measure the historical level of service, but to look at a forward-looking level of service over the next 10 years or planned level of service. So we saw that change for transit, but unfortunately, as you pointed out, in other service areas, the absence of a certain service historically would certainly prevent us from including it in a development charge calculation.
Bob?
I won't go through all 40, but just one other. The situation, it says that, okay, on your capital projects, you list the number of, potential capital projects, and then you remove from that grants and so on. Well, if I'm going to be building some new roads in 5 years from now, or if I'm going to have to expand, the water treatment facility 5 years from now, I don't know what grants I'm going to get. It's at best, it's it's a pretty much a wish and a prayer whenever we apply for government grants. So how do you deal with something like that?
So with that specific example, we were quite conservative with inclusion of grants in the calculation. So unless there is a reasonable expectation that grant funding will be secured for a given project, it would not be included as a deduction.
Questions? Councillor Ryle.
Yeah, just one with relation to residential. The way you're describing it, you were talking about additions and so on. So are we basically saying that development charges would only apply to residential new builds? Or let's say in the case of someone who has decided to demolish their home and now rebuild one, would that be considered an addition or would it be classified as a new build?
So in the case of so first of all, development charges generally apply to both residential and non-residential development. So, but it would be new development, generally speaking. Now, on to your example of a residential kind of rebuild. So if someone demolishes an existing home and builds a new one in its place, that would trigger a development charge because there's a building permit issued for the construction of a new dwelling. But there are certain credit provisions that are included in development charge bylaws that say if there was a building permit to demolish a building issued prior to the construction of a new dwelling, there's a redevelopment credit that gets observed. So if someone is demolishing a single detached home, building a new one in its place, the credit would basically eliminate the development charge requirement. If, however, someone demolishes, let's say, a single detached home and builds a row of townhouses on that same property, then we would calculate the development charges payable on the townhouses, but deduct the development charge that would have been payable on the original home, and only the net kind of difference would become the development charge payable. So it's trying to capture the incremental service demands that result from either new construction or redevelopment.
Questions? Councillor Danielson.
Thanks for the presentation. I've got to say, I do have a little bit of mixed feelings about development charges as a whole. I can see how, there is a need with substantial developments in a municipality for the municipality to be able to recover some of the service costs that they're facing. On the other hand, I can see that development charges could be quite a deterrent to development. And, trying to find a balance, it would be a bit of a challenge for me. It looks to me like there's some very, very detailed and challenging calculations associated with what those development charges would be, which could be a challenge for some, small municipalities to work out. I can see there might be a need for some help in that regard. The specific question that I've got is, why would industrial developments be exempt? I can see them having a greater impact than some other kinds of development. I just curious why they would be listed as exempt.
So the intent generally with that type of exemption is to, I guess, incentivize industrial developments to locate within a municipality because it's deemed to provide some economic benefits through attracting or creating employment opportunities within a municipality. And the reason why industrial tends to be targeted versus commercial, for example, is because generally speaking, commercial development tends to follow where the population is, whereas industrial developments have more, I guess, discretion or flexibility as to where they locate. And so fees and charges, including development charges, maybe have a bigger impact on their decision as to where to locate versus commercial development.
If I could ask one more.
Go ahead.
I just wonder what the thought process is for bringing this information down to the member municipalities so they have a greater understanding of how the process works.
Yeah, so we will be working with, again, both the county as well as each of the area municipalities, including councils in all municipalities, as well as staff, to make sure that there's an understanding within each of those as to the process that needs to be followed. And as I mentioned at the beginning, these are really 5 separate development charge studies that are being undertaken at the same time. So the county will have a development charge study and potentially consider a development charge bylaw. And each of the area municipalities will also have a background study and the potential to introduce development charge bylaws within each respective municipality as well.
Councillor Dayu.
Thanks very much for the presentation. How localized must the municipal capital projects be relative to the new developments that have paid these charges? Do the capital projects have to be directly physically linked to the new developments, or could we pool those funds and apply them to the more urgent projects across the county or the municipality?
Right. So definitely more the latter. It would be more of that kind of pooling approach. We don't necessarily need to draw a linkage between a specific project and a specific development. It's looking at the development overall and understanding that many of the services are provided on a more of a network basis, right? So just because there's development in area A, if that doesn't trigger, you know, a road widening project, for example, but when we look at the development overall, we might see that certain areas might need signalized intersections or widening of a road. So it's that overall kind of growth that contributes to the overall service demand. So more of that pooling approach as you described.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Rao?
So going to the industrial side of something, and maybe this is a redundant question, but I want to ask it anyway. As part of installing a facility, regardless of what that facility might be it a shopping mall, be it an industrial site, doesn't matter what it is. There is going to be a requirement, let's say, to expand roads or create an on-ramp or some kind of an adjustment to the overall way that traffic and or the public is handling that particular venue, plus the fact that there could be additional excavation and various types of related things to actually build this building. So consequently, that would still be part of the overall cost for that particular developer and or person that is going to be responsible for the building when it's completed. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct. So there will be certain requirements for development to proceed. I think you've described it for an industrial type development, very similarly for residential subdivision. Again, there could be internal roads, internal infrastructure within the plan of subdivision, which would typically be direct developer responsibility. So that will continue to be the case. In fact, one of the things that we will need to address within the background study is what's called a local service policy. And so that's a policy that will delineate between those items, those types of infrastructure improvements or upgrades that would continue to be direct developer responsibility because they are perhaps tied more directly to that specific development versus broader service expansion needs that would be included for funding through the development charge. So such as, and maybe an expansion of a fire station somewhere that wouldn't be triggered by specific development per se, that would potentially be triggered by overall development that's happening within a municipality. So that wouldn't be any given developer's direct responsibility. It will be covered by pooling these charges from all development within a municipality to fund that eventual expansion of that facility.
Other questions? Not, Councillor.
Sorry, one quick one. I noticed that the presentation wasn't included in the agenda. I just wanted to make sure that we all received copies of the presentation.
Okay. Resolution? Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, Jennifer, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks very much. Just a final question about level of service. And is there a date or a range of years against which it is expected that we would determine what a level of service is? Haliburton has grown tremendously over the last 10 years. COVID was made for huge changes for us. And so already in COVID, our levels of service were struggling to keep up. I wonder if when you calculate the correct level of service, whether you would go back as far as 15 years or 20 years, or whether it would be 5 years ago. For example, public parking. What used to be, there were spaces for one car for every number of homes. We now have 4 cars showing up for the same number of homes, and I just wonder, where does that standard fall? Is it written down somewhere?
Yes, so that's one of the requirements of the Development Charges Act, which is very specific in saying that that historical level of service has to be measured over a 15-year period, starting with the year preceding the year in which the study is developed. So it would start in 2024 and look 15 years back, and we have to calculate the average over that 15-year period.
Okay, thanks.
Questions? Mary?
Is there a number like 10% or something growth that makes this economically feasible for a township to do? Because there's obviously overhead here and there's calculations. Somebody's got to do them, and the county doesn't get any benefit from this, right?
under the excuse me, the word
No.
to you to the Councillor Fury. Under the legislation, the county can have their own DC, so there could be a part of that going forward. So,
But they don't have development like roads, I
No.
guess.
just the roads portion,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Okay, but that's funded too, so I don't know. I don't know, it looks to me like it's fairly complex. Something to understand this, but I could be wrong.
Okay, resolution.
That the presentation regarding development charges from Watson Associates be received.
Someone move. Councillor Carter, second by Councillor Ryle. All in favor? It's carried. The consent agenda.
Sorry, I've lost my, that the consent agenda be approved as presented.
Could I have someone move? Councillor Shell, second by Councillor McKechnie. All in favor? It's carried. Consideration of reports, Office of the CAO, Chief Administration Officer, State of Emergency.
Just once, second, word, just so I'm catching up, did we approve the minutes?
No, I didn't see them on here, actually.
Yeah. H1.
Let's do.
Sorry, yeah, sorry. Yeah, thank you. My apologies. Thank you. So thank you, Warden Burton. With respect to the ice storm report, I would note that there is an amended version of the report on your desk. I inadvertently looked at an old submission from the director from Ms. Robinson. So the numbers are off, but they're only off by small amounts. I think it was about $4,000 in total. That I think there might have been an invoice missing between the numbers I looked at. So that's the principal part of the change. And also the recommendation changed slightly because there's prescribed wording from the province that we need when we submit our applications. That's the purpose of the amended copy. Just as background, as we all remember, back into it seems like forever ago now, back into April when the ice storm hit, that we had between 35 and 40 millimeters of freezing rain hit the municipality with our primarily Minden Hills and portions of Highlands East over a 2-day period. It ended up being the third largest ice storm event in Ontario history. It was quite significant in the sense that we had greater than 20,000 residences without power for anywhere between 3 and 14 days going forward. But also to compound things, as people would remember, is the impact of 2 to 3 days of no internet or cellular contact in that area as well, which was significant for us. During that period, with the county's response in partnership with Minden Hills, and the numbers I'm talking about are separate from what the township had put into the program as well. We had unbudgeted costs of about $354,000, which covered wages, materials, and contracted services, both in the immediacy of the operation and dealing on the emergency side of it, but also going into the cleanup portion of it as well over the next roughly 30 days going forward. The province has a program, the Municipal Ice Storm Assistance Program, whereby we are eligible for a certain percentage of recovery of those unbudgeted costs. There's a threshold. It's a scaled piece with respect to the threshold. If you spend 3% of your own source income, you're eligible for up to 95% recoup. In our case, that 3% is almost $700,000 or $650,000. We didn't come near that threshold, so we fall into the secondary category, which is up to 75% recovery on costs. And I think it's important now that we should recognize Premier Ford in his insistence that they waived. There was a requirement before. If you didn't reach a certain threshold, you received no reimbursement. So through the Premier's office for all municipalities in Ontario, they waived that criteria. So we are eligible for the 75% recovery on costs going forward. Based on the formula that we're eligible for 193,000 of our piece, or the 75%, and those are of the eligible costs. Those are all costs that are operating and capital costs directly related to the storm. So they have to be, and we have to prove and attest that they were related to the storm, and we're easily able to do that with the cost going forward. And that's where our 193,000 of the 336,000 comes from going forward. We also were very fortunate to receive a $10,000 grant from Hydro One to offset some of our costs going forward, which has been applied to our net costing. So when you factor in our eligibility of the 75% rebate from the province plus the $10,000 from Hydro One, we still have a net cost to the county of about $143,000 that was unbudgeted for 2025 that we'll address as we report back to council as we move forward through the year. As we go forward with this information right now, we have submitted an expression of interest to the province, stating that we would be applying for the grant, which is a criteria of the grant. With the passing of the motion that's before council, we will then, Ms. Robinson will have authorization to attest to the money being that we're looking for and to submit the application to the province for reimbursement. So with that, Warden, we'll take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary, for the report. Questions? Councillor Carter. Right, no further questions? Resolution.
That staff report CEO 08-2025 State of Emergency Ice Storm 2025 update be approved, and that the County of Haliburton requests assistance under the Municipal Ice Storm Assistance Program for eligible costs directly linked to the March 25th ice storm, and further that the Director of Corporate Services be delegated authority to verify and attest to the accuracy of the application package.
Moved by Councillor Carter, second by Councillor Ferry. All in favor? It's carried. Corporate Services, Finance, Financial Report. Andrea.
Thank you, Warden and Council. Overall, as of June 30th, the county had collected 49.8% of budgeted revenues, 52.4% of operating costs had been incurred, and 14.5% of capital expenditures incurred. I've highlighted a number of items within my report to bring to Council's attention as we close out Q2. Within our revenues, a few areas that are trending higher than predicted are our investment revenue, the provincial funding, which is due to the unused 2024 monies that we're reflecting in 25, and then the other revenue line, which is due to the unbudgeted WSIB rebate that I reported on in Q1. Highlights within our expenses, our heat and hydro costs for the county admin and public works buildings are trending higher than budget. IT is anticipating their budgeted contracted services line to be over budget by approximately $10,000 at year end due to costs related to the cyber maturity threat assessment and unbudgeted costs related to the ERP project. We received our 2024 Q4 invoice from CKL the end of April, which was just over $58,000 over the 2024 budgeted accrual that was set up at year end. Therefore, this deficit will be recognized in 2025. Of that, approximately $32,000 was due to 4 capital projects that closed in deficits, and the remainder being the rent supplement issue that was brought to Council's attention Q2 2024 after the budget had been finalized. In public works, fleet is currently trending over budget by approximately 62%. This is mainly seen in the vehicle repair parts, oil and fuel costs. Position recruitment will be over budget in 2025 due to successful recruitment initiatives previously approved by Council, which has all been approved to be funded by reserves. As of June 30th, the spring ice storm net cost totaled $217,000, which is reflected in the reports attached. Overall, at this time, directors are anticipating to address any identified issues within the overall 2025 budget allocations. However, if any further updates are needed, we'll bring them to Council with the Q3 report. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions, Councillor Carter?
Just one on, so in the previous report, we had that 143,000. Will that be going to the individual departments, or are you going to put that in a separate?
No, sorry, through the warden, we did create a specific cost center for the state of emergency, and that's where those monies will sit within the general government section of the reporting.
Okay.
Other questions? Resolution?
That report number COR 11/2025 Q2 financial report, including year-to-date actuals as of June 30th, 2025, be approved as presented.
If someone move. Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Danielson. All in favor? It's carried. Borrowing bylaw?
Typically, the borrowing bylaw is brought to council annually in January for approval. This bylaw covers our short-term borrowing for our $2 million overdraft with CIBC and our $300,000 limit for our corporate credit cards. After experiencing ongoing issues with our current corporate card provider over an extended period of time, it was time to look at what other options were available to us. After a detailed review of potential service providers within the municipal sector, US Bank One Card, which is actually administered by CIBC, has been chosen as our new corporate credit card provider. I'm bringing back the borrowing bylaw to councils for the approval to reflect this change in provider.
Any questions? Councillor Carter.
I can't let it go by that we're going with the US Bank. I realize it's administered by CIBC, but US Bank is a US bank. You know, they're incorporated in Delaware, and you know, I just feel strongly that if we are going to be paying service charges and so on, we should be dealing with a Canadian supplier.
Any comments?
I do understand council's concern with that. Again, this is the card also recommended by our current bank that we are using as CIBC.
Councillor Rao.
Rough idea of what the differential would be if we were to go from realizing that what we have now may not be acceptable, but to go to a Canadian alternative. What would the differential be between staying and going with the US versus Canadian?
That is something that I would have to bring back to council. We did look at and compare 4 different card options, including the one we currently were using. And this had the best return for the county, the best administrative options for our staff with hands-on access online. So after reviewing all 4 plus the current, this one was our recommendation. But if that is something council would like to see, we could bring that back for you.
Councillor Danielson.
Were any of the banks that you were looking at Canadian?
Not knowing where they all descent from, I don't know if I can state all the ones we looked at. It was TD, American Express, Scotiabank, and US Bank through CIBC.
Gary.
Thank you, Warren. Just to add to Ms. Robinson's comments, I think it's important to note that appreciate your comments, Councillor. The majority, yes, it is a US-based thing, but they do work through the Canadian banks, and this is not uncommon. I'm just saying from a process standpoint, you'll see this will be the majority of municipalities that use a P-card system. They're in the same situation as we are. But if it is council's direction, we will go back and look at the options, bring information back, but we wouldn't be unusual in this type of arrangement, in this type of service.
Yes.
I hate to ask for additional work to be done in this regard, but I have to agree with Councillor Carter that I really would like a bit of a review done to see if we can, you know, make some steps towards working with Canadian institution.
Says, go ahead.
I would have a tendency to agree with that as well.
Other questions, comments?
Councillor Carter had his hand up.
Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, just look, you know, the world has changed, and it may be more difficult for us to buy Canadian. In some cases, it may be an additional cost, but in the long run, you know, that benefits our country. So I know this is probably trivial in terms of how much we spend on this, but it's still, if it's at least symbolic, and is, I think, important that we as a government are supporting our own country.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Can I request that council approve the bylaw today as presented, as we have started the transition to these cards, and staff will bring back a report and we can further transition if needed.
I'm fine with that. Great. Resolution?
If I might just ask one question of Ms. Robinson, Andrew, how much time will you need?
I can have it ready for September. I will not be available for the September 10th meeting, so.
I think it's important Ms. Robinson be here for that meeting. Would October be fine?
Sure.
Thank you. As amended, and I can adjust as I think I have council's intention here. That report COR 1225 be received, and that the borrowing bylaw be hereby approved as presented, and further that staff be directed to report back to council at their October meeting on a transition plan, a potential to transition to Canadian-based provider.
Someone move. Danielson, second by Councillor Ferry. All in favor? It's carried. Public Works, Transportation, approval of ordering supply of sodium chloride. Sil?
Morning, Warden and members of council. My first report this morning is the approval of awarding sodium chloride contract. It's the contract is for 3 years and with 2 additional 1-year terms. A cooperative request for tender was closed on June 17th with 2 tenders submitted. The results of the tender are Windsor Salt and Compass Materials Corp. Now, the amount shown in the report is the total of all the municipalities in the cooperative. So it looks like a large number, but it's all of the municipalities put together. Below in the report, I have separated the county's portion. For year 1, it would be 790,000. Year 2 would be 821,000. Year 3 would be 853,000 for a total of 2,466,000 for the 3-year. The salt prices for 25-26 had an increase of 2.8% over last year's costs, which would bring the total for our portion of the contract, including non-recoverable taxes, at $2,509,000. We recommend that it be awarded to the low bid, which was Windsor Salt.
Questions, Murray?
Doesn't say anything about delivery to the various townships, and they're not listed. So where does this salt, is it coming to Minden, and is it coming to Dysart, and or what's the delivery status, or do we have to pick it up somewhere?
No, the delivery has already come to council previously for the award. And through the county, we have an understanding, past practice with the lower tier municipalities that if they require salt, they contact the county, we order it for them. It's delivered at their yard, or they can pick it up at one of our yards. And
So we don't have the township prices here on it, do we? Are they broken out here? Like you got the county broken out, but I don't.
No, the townships are not part of this
Oh, they're not
Tender.
part of this,
No.
okay.
No. We just provide them salt if they require
Okay.
the salt.
Okay, so,
Through, and they get our pricing for the salt.
okay, so you, if Minden Hills need the salt, they phone you
Correct.
and you deliver it to their site,
Yes.
and that's included in the price.
Yes.
Okay. Because it is different between.
Go ahead.
I guess I just wanted to voice a little bit of concern. There was a lot of angst about this particular contract, given that it covered a much broader area than just Haliburton County. You know, there were a lot of surrounding municipalities included. I think that it created a number of challenges for local companies who wanted to bid on the delivery of salt, and I'm a little concerned about that. I mean, I know that we need to get the best service and the best prices possible, but I also want to ensure that we're looking after our local contractors. And this particular contract, if I'm not mistaken, made it almost impossible for local contractors to bid. And well, I've got a problem with that.
Just to answer your question on that one, this is supply only for salt. The delivery, it came to council last council for approval. And there were two different tenders.
Other questions? Resolution?
Just when Sal, can you provide a little more clarification as to what the first tender covered? I think that may be the one that Councillor Danielson is referring to, and this in this specific tender.
Okay, so the first tender at last council was specifically to delivery of the salt, and it was part of this same conglomerate cooperative of municipalities, and each municipality noted their delivery, the locations for delivery, and then the basically the company bid on the specific sites for pricing. And we had all the municipal yards and the county yards as part of that for delivery.
Have we addressed, I also understand that there were concerns about the timing of delivery, to meet the specific needs depending on, sort of what kind of conditions we were looking at, in any given winter. I just want to make sure that those concerns have been addressed and that there won't be any issues with the timely delivery when needed.
Yes.
And my apologies if I confused the two different contracts.
Sorry. Yes, those concerns have been addressed with the successful.
Okay, thank you.
Right?
Question is, for instance, if Thomas Contracting wanted to deliver their salt, is that possible now or is it not possible because we've already committed to this other company?
The tender for the delivery is for the county.
Yes, I understand that.
So if the municipality would like to purchase the salt and have someone deliver the salt for them, that would be up to the individual municipality.
But could they deliver it under your contract and pick it up? That's the question.
We can have it delivered to the yard and they can pick it up at our yard for the price
Okay.
quotas.
Okay.
And traditionally, that's how it's been done. It's been usually picked up at our yard or we have it delivered directly to their yard.
Resolution?
The staff report PWS 15/2025 approval to award the 3-year contract for the supply of sodium chloride be approved and that a bylaw be presented for authorizing the warden and clerk to execute the 3-year supply agreement with Windsor Salt Limited.
Someone move? Councillor McKechnie, second by Councillor Danielson. All in favor? It's carried.
Thank you.
Engineering, new hallway stop intersection, County Road 14 and County Road 6.
So this report is it's in regards to a all-way stop at the intersection of County Road 14 and County Road 6 in Eagle Lake. The It's due to safety concerns relating to sight lines and collision occurrences. Recently, staff conducted a warrant investigation of the intersection in accordance to the Ontario Traffic Manual. The safety concerns and justifications of the all-way stop were met with the following considerations: were there restricted sight lines due to fixed obstructions and collision history. As part of the process, staff will notify emergency services, residents, and road maintenance crews. Put notification in through social media and county website, and also install all the proper signage. The projected cost would be $1,200, which can be absorbed in the existing department budget.
Right. So, Councillor Shell.
Want me to turn it so you can remember my name? Hey, you. Question through the chair. So these, maybe I missed it in here, but the signs that are going up, so you're gonna have the all-way stop. Considering the dark sky of that area, for the most part, will it have like a red flashing light on it as well, or is it just going to be a stop sign?
No, correct. There is presently a red
Okay,
flashing on County Road 6.
Yes.
There's a yellow on County
So
Road
it'll be
14, so
both.
it'll be both,
Okay.
both.
okay,
red.
perfect. Thank you.
Other questions? Councillor McKechnie?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank Council and Sil and everybody. Needless to say, I live around that area. And also I'd like to say thanks on behalf of all of my constituents in that area and all the tourists that arrive in that area. I frequent that area quite often, and it is a very dangerous area, and I think this is a great thing that's happening. I think it would be really great too if you could send out a message to all the lake associations north and around that intersection, whether it's Haliburton Lake, Redstone, or maybe even Kinesis. But I just think that everybody should be notified, of course. But I'd just like to say again, thanks very much. It's muchly appreciated. I think it's a great thing for our community. Thank you.
Resolution?
The staff report, PWS 13/2025, approval to convert the intersection of Haliburton Lake Road, County Road 14, and Eagle Lake Road, County Road 6 into an all-way stop. Be approved, and that staff be directed to amend bylaw 2326 to recognize the intersection of County Road 2014 and County Road 6 into an all-way stop.
If someone move, Councillor McKechnie, second by Councillor Shell. All in favor? It's carried. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you.
Capital projects, approval of awarding pavement marking project tender.
This report is to approve the award of the 25 pavement marking project. The request for tender closed on August 12th, and we received 5 bidders. The proposed bid price was within budgeted amount. The staff are recommending accepting the lowest bid price that met all requirements, and to award the contract to Apex Paving Markings, Inc. The budgeted amount was 215,000, and the recommended bid price with including non-recoverable tax was 187,000. So it was within budget. And,
Okay,
happy to answer
questions? So I noticed the paint they used last year did not stick. I don't know whether you had any complaints about it or not, but it seemed to fade very quickly.
Okay, no, sorry, we did not receive any complaints, but we'll, and it's a latex paint now that they use. They can't use the oil-based paint anymore, so it doesn't quite last as much as the previous paint.
Councillor Ryle?
The other thing too is the particular, came home from coming towards Gooderham, going through Cardiff, and we're on basically, actually it was after that when we got on to 503. So past east of or west of Tory Hill. What I was noticing was when the heavy rain came, that the actual markings almost vanished, because I guess the resilience of the rain or whatever the case may be was a problem. And in many cases, if it wasn't for the side parts, it would be very difficult to follow. It seems to me it's a technological issue, and I'm not sure if there's anything you can do about it. But I was just wondering, is there a product that's available that would be more visual in the case of rain than not?
To answer your question, Councillor Rao, the reflective portion of the paint is glass beads, and it's applied on the paint when it's applied on the road. So sometimes due to wear, like snowplows, traffic, sometimes the beads are basically removed off from the paint, and it's not as reflective. The paint's still there, but it's not as reflective in the evening or in case of rain.
Other questions? Resolution?
The staff report PWS 16-2025 approved to award the 2025 payment marker project tender be approved, and that a bylaw be presented, authorized, and awarded, and the clerk to execute agreement with Apex Paving Markings Inc.
And if someone move, Councillor Shell, second by Councillor Ferry. All in favor? It's carried.
Thank you.
Thanks. So planning and economic development, nothing there, information, IT.
Good morning, Warden Burton, members of council. Before you today is my standard IT work plan update, giving council an overview of projects and initiatives currently underway in the IT department. As per the report highlights, the IT team is continuing to work on SharePoint transitions for the county and the member municipalities. County IT is currently either, or has been and currently either leading or participating in several RFIs and RFPs benefiting both the county and the municipalities. There are several projects underway related to GIS. One of them is an internal strategy that we're working on within the GIS team, and another one is the NG911 project that we're working with a third-party consultant. The county, Algonquin Highlands and Minden Hills, continue to work on an RFP for a replacement for their ERP systems. There are several infrastructure projects underway, including some wireless network upgrades, some surveillance and building security upgrades, as well as our standard workstation device refresh plan. And as the chair of the Eastern Ontario IT Collaborative this year, I'm working with that group on several projects, including a joint work plan for that group, as well as some work regarding the creation of a responsible AI usage framework. So that is the key highlights in the report. As always, happy to answer any questions council may have.
Any questions? Resolution?
That the IT work plan update report be received as presented.
If someone move, Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Dennison. All in favor? It's carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Emergency medical services, Mike? Stop.
Okay. Good morning, Warden Burton and members of council. Bringing to you a staff report about the purchase of replacement ambulances. So there were two that were ordered in 2024.
The purchase order went in. Originally, the delivery dates were supposed to be the fall of 2025 and then the winter of 2026. We've heard from the manufacturer that they will be now coming off the line as of September 2nd, so next week, with an anticipated delivery date of the middle of September now, not the end of August here. These are replacement vehicles for a couple of our older ones, plus the addition of the power load system that was started previously. And then just looking future-wise, currently with the current manufacturers, we're looking at 18 to 24 months from time of order for replacement ambulances to come in, which puts a couple of our other vehicles in need of more immediate attention to be replaced. So happy to take any questions.
Questions? Resolution?
That staff report EMS 04-2025 purchase of replacement ambulance to be approved, and that the Haliburton County Council approved the transfer of $275,718 from the ambulance capital reserve for the purchase of an ambulance scheduled for delivery in September 2025.
Someone moved. Danielson, second by Ferry. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. External boards and agencies, Land Division.
Thank you, Warden. There's nothing particularly of note to bring to council's attention coming out of the two meetings covered in the report. Just to date this year, application numbers are trending the same as 2024, with the only noticeable difference being an uptick in applications in Minden Hills and a downtick of applications in Highlands East. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Resolution?
That report PLN 15-2025 Land Division Activity Report for June, July 2025 be received.
Someone moved. Councillor Shell, second by Councillor Carter. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Council, I think we'll entertain a break till probably 10:30, 15 minutes. Thank you. Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. Business arising from previous council meeting, Land Registry Office.
Right. Thank you, Warden Burton. The report that's been provided to council is in response to, I believe it was our June council meeting, where specific questions were asked with respect to options for renovations to this building or just the building and administration building in general. The one specific question, or two specific questions that were brought up, or requests were brought up by council, dealt with looking at the costing or the practicality of installing, or sorry, making an addition to this building versus the two building option that was presented at the time. And there was also a request to receive a cost estimate for if we were to put the 12 Newcastle Street, which is the old Land Registry office, up for sale. And that's been done. With us today is Ms. Eileen Tessier, who's been working with the county over the last number of months with respect to the project. And she's here to answer any questions council may have with respect to the work that went into the evaluation of the addition to the building, as well as any other questions they have regarding the design elements of the building as well. We also engaged the services of an engineering firm to discuss the implications around the possible need for specialized foundations for any addition to the building. So there's two design elements brought in place in there. Mr. Kluche can speak to the findings of that report. And with that, I can just give a high-level overview of the information that was brought in, and then we can entertain questions from council. I think that may be the best way to address them. So as I mentioned, we were tasked with going backwards, we're going back to evaluate certain options that came forward. And so one of the questions I believe as Councillor Carter raised last time was the amount of square footage that was acquired for our uses. Based on the original designs, we're looking at roughly the additional through the design would create additional 2,600 square feet of space. And that space, it's important to realize, isn't for a lot of growth. It's actually accommodates our current needs, our current sea of needs, in the sense that we, just for specific purposes, we currently have two staff members that don't actually have a space to work directly in the building. They kind of hot desk it in and out. But also we have two staff members that are situated in less than optimum locations with respect from a health and safety standpoint. So that was part of the consideration as to going forward, as well as the increase in meeting space that we currently have, very limited meeting space with the exception of this room here going forward. So those are the elements that went into the square footage. Whether or not so that's what the numbers are based on, is that specific square footage. So that number could fluctuate based on what ground. But Ms. Tessier can talk about the practicality of the size and why the size is important. And so with respect to that, we also talked about the getting or requiring of a geotechnical report on the back piece, because it's a filled lot in recognition of the issues that happened next door when they built the condos next door. We did look into it, that the geotechnical study itself was going to cost $12,000 to do. So we didn't actually commission the full study, but we got a tabletop, basically a desktop opinion from an engineer as to what could be required, and should we proceed in any fashion, we would have to go into securing the geotechnical study going forward on that. Based on the requirements of just the addition itself and the estimates put in regarding the construction of the addition, just the addition, the total price that came to just a little under $2.5 million, not including any specialized foundation work if required for the additional study. The AODA, or the accessibility requirements that would need to be done in this building, as we spoke in detail with at our previous meeting, and then the $12,000 for the geotechnical study. If all that are added together, the total price of the renovations include with the addition would be roughly $3.1 million. And then again, any of the foundation requirements would be that with respect to that. Regarding to the AODA requirements, again, I'll let Ms. Tessier speak to those specifically. Any specific questions council may have on those. Is there some certain requirements we have with the province? And just as a refresher, the option that we were dealing with before from the staff, which included the renovation of this building and 12 Newcastle Street across the street, the total cost of that project was $2.4 million. And we did receive an evaluation of 12 Newcastle Street for the property, and it was estimated that the market value range of that building was $375,000 to $425,000, and that's included in the attachment as to the report for council. Okay. And with that, we can turn it over for questions from council.
All right. Questions? Councillor Danielson.
Any questions? I have we've gone through a lot of processes.
Microphone.
Sorry. I don't have a question. I know that we've gone through a lot of different considerations and looked at different options. And I'm still absolutely set on the staff recommendation that we proceed with what was proposed to us earlier on in the year with the council chambers moving to 12 Newcastle Street and the improvements made to this building. I would welcome Minden Hills Council to meet in our new council chambers when it's ready. And I'm good to go with what was originally proposed.
Gary, go ahead.
Sorry, Warden, just I forgot to mention that Ms. Robinson has Ms. Robinson does have information regarding the costing and borrowing required for the project. If council has questions regarding that side.
Okay. Councillor Shell.
I would agree with everything that Councillor Danielson just said, because we've done this and coming back full circle here. But I would also like to hear what Mrs. Robinson has to say about the financial impact and what that's going to look like. But we are not dwindling as a community. We are continuing to grow. At some point, it might not be in the lifetime of any of these members of council, but I am sure there will be an amalgamation of some sort with the county, whether it be just the 4 lower tiers or we're forced to go with Muskoka or City of Kawartha Lakes. And we just do not have the capacity currently. We don't have the capacity currently for the staff we do have. So I think it's imperative that we look at the future and what we have to do next to accommodate.
Andrea?
Thank you. With the $2.4 million price and with what council had approved for reserve usage towards this in the 2025 budget, along with the AODA grant that we have, we would be debt financing just over $2 million for the project. Interest rates currently range for 4.85% for a 30-year, 4.59 for 20-year. A 30-year, which would be what would be recommended, as the building rentals would be amortized over a 40-year period. It would cost approximately $160,000 annually. So the first year you'd anticipate likely half of that need in the budget, because we likely wouldn't need to take on the debt until into 2026. With the full amount being implemented the following year. And each year that need would decrease as the loan is paid down. With the county's debt policy, we have an annual repayment limit of about $3.4 million. With our current debt payments, we do have a room of $2.6 million in repayment money. So we do have a very large or available debt financing to us if that's what council wishes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rudd.
Yeah, regardless of which option we choose with regards to what we're going to build, when it comes to the financing itself, there is a strong feeling out there that we could see a reduction in interest possibly later this fall, not sometime in early 2026. When we sign something, are we locked into what's going at that time, or can we put ourselves in a position that if the interest rates go down, we go down with it?
We wouldn't lock in until we were ready to borrow the money. So we can have the conversations with IO at this time, or if council wishes for me to look in other locations, I can do that also. But it's the interest rate that's provided when we arrange the monies.
Councillor Carter.
Sorry, I should clarify, disperse the monies.
Right. I think that's important that the building has to be substantially complete before you can do your debenture. So it comes to the interest rate of when you complete your building. Up to then, you're borrowing on their special rate for building. So it's not, you don't lock in, but you are tied into whatever the moment you have to borrow is where you get locked in. So yes, we are growing. Obviously, there's space that's needed here. It doesn't really matter that if we were to amalgamate or because of, changing governments or whatever, I mean, we would still need the space. So I don't think that that's really the issue. I do have a problem with across the street. Welcome, your generous offer for Minden Council to move into the new building, but we have a building. And there's little that we can do with that building since we also share it with the court. So that building is going to continue to exist and is adequate for Minden Council, at this point. So, the issue across the street with me, and I'm not suggesting that the selling price is something that we could even attain today, because of the market and the fact that that's a small lot and so on. To me, it's the ongoing maintenance and of that building and heating it and costs going forward. I would much prefer that if we could sell it or repurpose it to some other non-government organization or government organization. I know it may not be ideal for childcare spaces, and but there could be something that could be done somehow. So I agree that we need to do the work here. I'm just not crazy about somebody still needs to convince me about across the street. That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
Just as a response, by not using, just for clarification, by not using 12 Newcastle Street, then the only option is to add to this building.
Other questions?
Well, first of all, I think we're falling in the same rut that the provincial and federal government's in. I don't know if many of you know it or not, but the province is paying $300 million a month interest on debt. The federal government's paying over $1 billion a month. And we're falling into the same trap. Just borrow the money, do what you have to do. I just want to see the business case is that we don't have enough office space, right? And but to borrow $2 million, it needs, I think interest rates are, I agree with Cease, they're probably going to go down 0.5 point, might even do it this week. But to me, this is when we got people that can't even buy enough groceries, and we're every time at the municipality, all of us are in the same boat. If we got to do a bridge or we got to pave about 3 or 4 kilometers, we got to borrow money. And we're on a slippery slope here. Like, how much do you keep adding 5 and 6% every year to the tax base? Is it really necessary that we do what we have to do? If it is, fine. What's the alternative? Like Mr. Dyke says, across the roads is the option is do it here or don't do it at all or move. So, and I'll also hear Mayor Carter's argument. So, look, I'm not going to fight against council on this, but I'm going to tell you, Dyser's paying 40% of this. And to me, it's not a very sound business case, but I don't know what the alternative is right now. So I got to shut up, but and I will.
Gary?
Sorry, we're just in response to Councillor Fury's point. I fully understand and support your comments with respect to the spending of money and the borrowing of money. However, the option that has been brought forward by by staff to council, has been done with that in mind. We've looked at the options with respect to, we do require additional space. As I mentioned in my first piece, is that the majority of the work being is accommodating existing use. We have built some small growth into the thing that would accommodate, I believe, 3 to 5 without converting one of the meeting areas into working space. So there is some growth built into it. But based on the needs we have and the other requirements we have with respect to the AODA requirements and things of that nature, the option brought forward by staff was the most cost effective, the amount is the amount, right? Was the most cost effective of the ones we looked at, right? With respect to either just trying to do this building, and then there was the option of sharing a space, adding to this building, just because unfortunately this building was designed in quite an interesting way when it was originally built. And it sits on a really awkward site in the sense it's a filled site. So those are the factors that under normal circumstances you wouldn't be dealing with, but they're adding to the value here. The bonus we have in doing this option versus new build or whichever is we've eliminated pretty much all structural work. It's almost primarily interior work, which has kept the cost where it is. And that's the discrepancy between the addition and the internal, because the option that staff brought forward was was exclusively internal renovations. The addition gets into structural work, and that's where that's why the price looks so disproportionate to the others. But I do hear your thing, and I've spoken at that at budget sessions as well. But in this, we've done the best we can, and we believe, and we truly do believe and support the fact that the option brought forward is the most fiscally responsible one we have.
Any other questions? Councillor Dayu.
Yeah, thanks. Gary, maybe you can just elucidate on that a little bit, because to me, it still seems a slam dunk that moving our county council chambers to the Minden Council chambers, and sharing that space, which is otherwise an underutilized public asset, would be the most cost efficient if it liberated number 12 Newcastle for other uses, such as increased staff office space, or as Councillor Carter said, maybe looking into childcare or whatever it might be. But as a series of public assets, to combine our council chambers into one strikes me as being the most cost efficient. So could you just circle back and tell me why that is not the most cost efficient?
Thank you, Warden Burton, through you to Councillor Dayu. Yeah, so my apologies. So that my comments were based on the fact is at our June meeting, that option of moving our options to Minden was, with respect was almost universally not a preferred option when we got back to it. It was brought forward before it was approved and came back, and there were some discussions on that. So yes, but I would say that whether that's a sustainable, like a long-term solution to it as well, I can't say. That option where we're splitting that council chambers. But yes, as the numbers say, if we were to go back to that option, that was we discussed back in June, the number would be less. There would be some investment we would have to make into the Minden facility to accommodate our needs. That would be less than what we're talking about. But as a sustainable piece, I think that within a number of years, maybe 5 years, you'd be looking at having to revisit that. But you are correct. The option we had where we renovated this building and then shared council chambers with Minden Hills is definitely a cheaper option.
Right.
One more thing to say. We're in the middle of a service review. And we don't know where things are going to land there on that yet. And the CAO has been very good about what he's approaching. But there are office spaces around this county. And who says, if we're thinking outside the box, that some of these services have to be in this building? They don't have to be. IT can be in several places. It is everywhere else in the world. It's not always in one place. So until we know some of that, and we should know that this fall, what I'm going to propose is that if you're going to renovate that building, you probably should do it next winter. I would think. That makes sense, because you can still use this place and do it after when you got the council chamber over there. But I think there's like, what's going to happen to these municipalities? Are they just going to, everything going to be in one place? I don't think so. So I just like to take a month or two here to not hold it up, put it in the 2026 budget, if that's where we're going, and I think we're going there. But I just don't know that we've pursued every possible options.
Gary?
Thank you, Ward Moore. Just a response to Councillor Fury. So with respect to the building itself, as I mentioned before, the bulk of the requirements for the renovation we're talking about are accommodate the existing county services. There is growth space built into the plan that can accommodate within the redeveloped area, primarily in the room we're sitting in now, that can accommodate small growth. I think probably 3 to 5 people. It maybe even that would be the number. We're not anticipating, and then we also have some on the lower level where we converted into some large meeting rooms. There is potential growth for them, but the principal use of those is the dearth of meeting space we currently have right now. With respect to the SDR and the 4 programs brought forward, the only one of those services that would be contemplated, and this would be subject to approval by councils going forward, that would be centralized would be the engineering function. And that level of growth, if you will, could be accommodated in the new design. Could not be accommodated as we currently sit, but could be accommodated under the new design. With respect to the other elements of the SDR, you're exactly correct. There are elements of those that would remain in, like, so the town would not everything would physically leave the townships going forward. But just from an administrative standpoint, on a consolidation basis, is in 30 some years experience in doing this, in the last almost 20 as a CAO, the administration of effective operations through siloed office is problematic, right? Sometimes it's necessary, and I'm not saying you would ever dispose of it, but if we have the opportunity to do it from one facility, I think that's one we should look at. But as we move forward with other things, those will be part of the conversations. But I think under the proposal we have now is we settle our immediacy needs with respect to use, our immediacy needs and becoming compliant with our AODA standards. We currently are not now, but also have the provision built in that we can accommodate space. So if and when, and it is an if and a when, that growth would come, it's not another large expense at a future date when, as most of us have realized over time, is the construction costs aren't going to go down. So we would have had that. So it's like pre-planning for it right now. It'll have an immediacy use, but also secondary use if the growth would happen.
Any other questions? Councillor McKechnie.
That's not a question. I just need to say I've been against spending this kind of money. You're saying it's probably going to be around $2.5 million. I'm sure when it's finished, it'll be well over $3 million. Like moving across the street, renovating here. I just think that that's a lot of money at these times, with like what's going on and all the other topics that are being discussed about our municipalities and the county. And I just think it's something that we should sit back and sit on for, like Murray said, just for see what is coming down the road. And because I just can't see spending $3 million, because maybe with what's coming down the road, it might be $5 million. And I'm just not in favor right now of bailing on this building. In the perfect world, of course, you're saying you can't put an addition on that would accommodate all your needs here, but I don't understand that either. I'm not an engineer, that's for sure. But I'm repeating myself, but I'm just against spending that kind of money and the times we're in, as far as I'm concerned, because I know what's the amount of money that's coming forward to Dysart in regard to our infrastructure on and on and on. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor. Just for clarification, our comments weren't that addition could not be put on this building. We evaluated it against the original option at the cost of the addition versus the renovation of this building and the renovation of 12 Newcastle. As stated through the report that was put together by Ms. Tessier's firm, is yes, the addition could go on the building that would accommodate the needs we have, and that's where the $3 million figure came from, was the addition plus the renovations of this building. So yes, it technically, absolutely, it can be done. But then we evaluated that cost against the cost of eliminating the structural components of the construction that would use council chambers on 12 Newcastle and 100% administration on 11 Newcastle. So I apologize if it was unclear before. We were not suggesting you couldn't put an addition on this building. We just evaluated the cost of that addition versus the other option.
Mary?
One for the consultant there, a question. Can you tell me, I know you said that this building is on fill, this present building. It hasn't moved in 75 years. So if it hasn't moved and we put a slab beside it and we reinforce the slab with the right amount of rebar from the engineers I talked to, it won't move either. So what is the problem with this?
So I would have to defer to the geotechnical report on that, but in reviewing what they've said about the poor soil conditions, what I put in on our budget was a standard foundation. It was just a normal 4-foot deep standard foundation slab on grade. If you look at the additional costs, so if you were going to have to deal with poor soil conditions, you will see under separate pricing, there's an additional $200,000. That would be on top of what my base budget was to deal with poor soil conditions. So the cost that I gave you did not deal with poor soil conditions. The one item that did deal with having to backfill more in order to raise the grade so that we could come in and meet AODA compliance at grade was with regards to the retaining wall, which by the time you backfill is roughly about 65 feet and between 8 and 10 feet high. That is a substantial structural reinforced retaining wall in order to bring your grade up to add that addition. And you can see that in a line item in my budget. It's almost $250,000 in that budget. And that's got to do with the pressure of putting 2 to 3 more feet of fill in that back to flush out the back of your lot. So the price I gave you in there was just standard normal footings.
Okay, I'm not
slab
trying to
on
argue
grade.
with your price, but that's predicated on 2,600 square feet.
Correct.
Which is as big as this building almost.
It's the equal size of 12
No.
Newcastle. I think
Yeah, I know, but
Your
we're not
your
using
footprint
all
is
of
much bigger
across the
than
road
that.
for office space. We're just
Mhm.
using it for a council chamber and some other rooms. I just don't understand this process here. But anyway, I'll shut up. And I will shut up this time.
just for clarity, I think, and Ms. Desche can step in as well, is to remember when we're going into the one building, because this space was all the staff spaces that were now be back to the renovations to the council chambers. And so that's how the square footage does line up. Like it's not an excessive amount identified in the addition. It lines up with the option that was brought forward to council the first time.
Yes,
On a need basis.
And I think a piece of the business case that gets dropped as the discussion goes on is the AODA compliance piece, right? A big piece of what's driving this, one is that this space where council currently sits can be used as office space, but two, this current council space is not AODA compliant. You have no clear path of travel from your elevator to the other side of your building where your handicap washrooms are and you have additional offices. And I know for me, having already visited your office during the day when you had a council meeting and having to meet in Gary's office, and having to carry up banker's boxes full of porcelain tiles and samples to Gary's office because I did not want to come through and disrupt your council meeting. I can't imagine if I was in a wheelchair and I had to go meet somebody on the other side of this room, having to come up in your elevator. You have no automatic door opener to even let me into your council chamber, and then having to pass through your council chamber in the middle of a meeting. Right? You guys talk about in your policies about dignity and all that other stuff. And I'm in a wheelchair and I'm having to pass through this room because there's no clear path of travel, right? This room is not an appropriate a room for people that are handicapped. It is not. You're not supplying handicapped seating. You have no automatic door openers. The entrance to the front of this building, the ramp is not co-compliant. If I'm in a larger wheelchair, I can't come up your ramp. I can't get in your building. I don't have an automatic door opener to get me through that front door. And with your aging community, with your aging counselors, there is going to be times where people that are handicapped are going to need access to your council chambers. Having your council chambers on a ground floor with direct access for the public to come in and use your council chambers, I think is really critical. And you outline it in your policies over and over and over again that you want to be AODA compliant. You're also in a position right now where you told through your tabletop check-in with the ministry that you are actively fixing these issues, and now you are postponing those issues.
Well, I'd just like to tell you that we've had an accessibility committee and we had a person in a wheelchair that came in here for 3 years. Didn't seem to be a problem, but anyway, I'm not going to argue with you because
right.
you're going to be.
The larger wheelchairs now do not come up that front ramp.
Okay. Other questions, Bob?
You look, there's nobody in this room who's going to argue against the AODA requirements and meeting them. That's not what we're talking about here, I think. I guess, again, I look at the situation and, everything that you want to do in this building, I can support. And, I don't think that if you need 2 new offices, do you totally renovate a new building and net 2 new offices? Because then as soon as you need the 3rd office, you're behind the 8 ball. I guess the situation for me again is across the street. 12 Newcastle, $1.3 million. Like, I'm sorry, and I'm not trying to rent out Minden's space here, but when I've got a council chamber that is used, 3-4 times a month, and it would cost virtually, maybe it costs $50,000 or $100,000 to get it set up the tables the way that the county wants it, but that seems to be a lot cheaper than $1.3 million. I guess I have to be convinced of what else are we getting across the street for that $1.3 million? Because if it's only a council chamber, then I think this is a colossal waste of money.
Gary?
Yeah, Councillor Carter. So a couple factors. So one thing I think is important to remember with respect to the use of this building, this room, excuse me, it's not just council meetings, right? We have detachment board, AODA, the community safety, well-being, a number of committees. So it's not just 3 days, or in our case, it would be, if we were both there, it wouldn't just be 4 days a month. There's a lot of use in the building. So by part of the design considerations going forward was that type of use with respect to, because if you convert, again, getting back to my earlier comment, renovate this building for office space, then you do just the office space part is you do have meeting rooms here, but that's the other part is, so they've been built in those meeting rooms, to your earlier point, is the growth factor as well. They have a specific purpose from day one, but they also provide the growth that you're speaking of. You wouldn't design a renovation just for 2 spaces. Again, the only thing I would come back to again on that is it also creates a public space, which we currently don't have for use for the public within the county structure itself. And also with respect to the shared spaces, whether the sustainability of that shared space piece is adequate over the long term. I mean, that's the only thing I can add to it. I'm not trying to convince you. I'm just saying in response to the comments you made is that was part of all the evaluation we had with doing the original layout of the building.
Councillor Danielson.
I'm concerned that we've been talking about this since last year. We included the funds in the budget. We've been going around and around and around, and I see the need for looking at the options that we've looked at. I really and truly do. My concern is that whatever option that we choose, if we wait until next year, it's just going to cost more money. There's just no question about it. And that I do find concerning. I just wish we could land somewhere.
Well, we're going to.
Mm.
Other questions? Comments? Oh, Jennifer, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, thanks very much. Two questions about the Minden Hills Council Chambers. If someone might remind me kindly, is it currently AODA compliant? And the second question I have on it is, what is the nature of the sustainability concern there? Is there already a projected change for that building that we would have to adapt to later on, or is it all systems go until the unforeseen happens?
Counselor, I can't speak to the accessibility part of that. I'll have to leave that to Minden Hills people. With respect to sustainability, it's just quote unquote rental space versus owner occupied space as well from the sustainability from my perspective. Less control from the county with respect to use, less control. Like we're fitting our schedule into the schedule of the owner, and just that part of it, from the administration part of it, is that's what I do by sustainability. Could it go on for 20 years? Absolutely. It wouldn't be the best solution, but yes, don't take me wrong. It could last that long. I just don't think when we're looking at the type of things we're talking about in the future and the growth of the area, that of the two, as staff recommended, the first is the preferred option. But yes, the option that we dealt with back in May and June would work. I'm not denying that.
All right. Other questions?
And sorry, Warden, I wonder if our colleagues from Minden could respond to the AODA piece for that building through you.
Thank you. Yes. So going through, there's definitely the automatic openings for the doors. There is a accessible washroom. I know for sure in the women's, I'm assuming there's one in the men's. And then but the only thing is to get to another part of the building, if you were in a wheelchair, you would have to go outside and come back up the ramp to the main floor area. But getting into the actual council chambers wouldn't be an issue. It would fall within the AODA.
Liz?
Well, I was just thinking about, it's hard to figure out just quite where to land. I was kind of thinking of going back to Councillor McKechnie's earlier comments about, you spoke about the value of this room or this building. And to me, I see the value of keeping county facilities together, as opposed to starting to spread out. Now, and that's aside from anything to do with the service delivery review and what happens there, because I can see, for instance, we talked about planning, and I can see us having, planners in all four of our, lower tiers. But I do see the value of keeping our facilities together, our group together. I think that there are some shortcomings in considering any sort of long-term use of the Minden Hills Council chambers. It's just, to me, I have a problem with that. And I'm not quite sure about, the response that we've got about AODA compliant. It sounds like it's certainly better than here, but
Look, we in Minden are offering something.
are you?
We're not,
You
we're
talking
not,
about
we're not
rental and
in,
cost
we're
to
not,
improve?
we're not forcing the county to come into Minden's chambers. We are just making it as an offer. In terms of what Gary, you mentioned about other committees and so on, yeah, I'm on many of them. And as we all are. And the thing is that we end up having those meetings at times when they don't conflict with other meetings, because you can't have, a meeting of the police detachment board if any of us are having a council meeting, because, that leaves somebody away from the police detachment board, and so on and so forth. We have a facility. It's there. It's not much different than being across the street. But, we are right now negotiating with the courts because we feel it's very, very important to the people of Haliburton County that they have the ability to have a court date here rather than having to travel to Lindsay or wherever. So we are negotiating with the courts on changes to that room. We are making changes to the room anyway. In terms of accessibility, it's on the main floor. It has ramps. It has automatic doors. I'm not saying that all of our washrooms and everything, can't use a fresh coat of paint, but that would all be into the leasehold improvements, whatever you want to call them. Look, I don't want to force people to actually have to come to Minden Council. That's not what this is all about. I'm just bringing up the point that, what for the 1.3 million or whatever it is across the road, what am I getting more than a council chamber? What else is there in that building? Because it's not only the capital cost, it's the ongoing costs on a go forward basis.
Right.
So
And
that's where
sorry.
we're at.
I think I can speak a little bit to that as well. So the opportunity over in 12 is the fact that it is a standalone facility with a small kitchenette. It's got a lobby. It will have a universal washroom as well as additional washrooms. So I would suggest that it could be used far more than just for council meetings. It can be used for general public meetings. It could be used for private functions if you needed to, if you had the ability to be able to rent the space out. So it has a lot of flexibility to it to be used for far more than just a council chamber 4 times a month.
Other comments, questions? Councillor Rob.
Yeah, it sounds like we got ourselves into a pretty good discussion over here on where we were, where we are, and where we used to be. And we're going around and around. But I have a problem with what I've heard with relation to across the street at 12. The biggest deterrent over there is parking. You can't park anything over there. You got to come down here somewhere to park. So if that becomes a more publicly used area, if you think our accessibility issues will be something, virtually all of those parking spaces would become accessible parking because I can't see anything else happening. There's not enough over there to do anything else. So that's one challenge. The other thing is when you look at the building over towards Minden Hills opportunity, if you look at it from the point of view that I have no vested interest on whether I own or don't own, merely just the whole logistics of the whole thing. If you were to sell off 12, you would come out of it with somewhere between $350,000 and $400,000. I think we all kind of agree that that's kind of where the number might be. And if that's the case, now we got something we can do. But if we don't do something in that general area, is anything going to be done in 2026 with the current attitude of council as it sits? Because my answer is probably not. We can't get consensus on anything. So at the end of the day, what are we going to do? I mean, we got to come up with something that makes sense. I mean, there is another option which we could throw out, and that is same thing what they're doing in Ottawa. They've got temporary buildings outside. Now there's a hell of a place to go. I mean, it's not something I would suggest, but that's something that they've done, and they did it for what looks like it's going to be a 15-year period. So there are a lot of options, but we're just not on the same page, people.
Councillor Danielson.
You're right about we're not on the same page. I really question whether we really and truly would get $350,000 or $400,000 for the building across the street. It's not good for anything except possibly a residential, like maybe a duplex. There's no parking. I would think that anybody who's considering doing anything there would have to tear the building down. So even the thought of that, I'm not sure. It's sad, to see a facility like that we couldn't be able to recover, some money there, but, I just think that that's to count on that money for use otherwise. And yeah, I just, and I, don't- I don't know what else to say. I know that Councillor Carter used the word offer, in respect to the council chambers there, but it's not exactly an offer. It comes at a considerable cost. When you look at the amount of money that, that's been estimated to make improvements there, you're talking about a lease. You mentioned the word leasing the room. So, there's cost associated with that. It's not just free space.
If I may.
Go ahead. And we're
Well,
going,
be specific,
here
Ahmed.
shortly.
Ahmed, the cost is, right now, there's a placeholder of $50,000. So, let's not talk about considerable costs. It's not going to be a huge amount of money. But,
I heard $100,000 here. I heard lease from you.
well,
It's not a debate here. Go ahead, Bob.
It is.
Splitting hairs, I'm sorry, whatever you want to call it. I mean, obviously, if somebody else is going to use your facility, there has to be some sort of an agreement. Maybe it's $1. I don't know what it is, but I'm just trying to say that there is a difference in cost compared to the building across the street. I'm not going to fight this issue. In terms of Councillor Brial, look, we're not going to reach consensus, and that's democracy. Doesn't mean you have to have consensus. So, we'll get to where we are, but I just wanted to clarify that.
We do have a resolution. Oh, I'd like a recorded vote on it too, man.
Thank you, Warden. That report PWS 1425 Land Registry Office and Administrative Buildings Renovation Project update be approved, and a staff be directed to proceed with the identified preferred option in the report. Excuse me.
Do I have someone move? Councillor Dayu?
Yeah, I'm very sorry, Warden. May I slip in one final question before someone moves? And it's a question for Ms. Tessier or for staff. If someone would kindly remind us the infrastructure that is considered for number 12, the bar in between council, where council sits, and the audience, and also the semicircular furniture for council. How flexible is that? If we were to, rent out that space, every single night for community purposes, could those pieces be removed, adjusted to? Yeah, I see a nodding head.
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
There seem to be two options offered in the report and a staff recommendation.
So, yes.
So I'm just not sure just exactly what it is that
Yeah.
the resolution is referring to.
So for clarity, my apologies, Council. The recommendation is, as written in the report, is the preferred option, which goes back to the renovations, both 11 and 12 Newcastle.
Okay.
The original.
Okay. Thank you.
Could I have someone move? Councillor Danielson, seconder. Councillor Shell.
Councillor Dayu. Oh, sorry. Councillor Dayu.
Yes.
Councillor Danielson. Councillor Ryle.
No.
Councillor Shell.
Yes.
Councillor Carter.
I said no.
Councillor Carter.
Yes.
Councillor Fury. Councillor McKechnie.
No.
Warden Burton.
Yes.
It carries 5-3.
Boy. Correspondence, we have, I think, consideration for bylaws, Gary.
Bylaws?
Yeah.
Be it resolved that bylaw 4312, a little dyslexia there, being a bylaw to authorize the borrowing of money to meet current expenditures of the corporation of the county of Haliburton be considered to be read a first, second, and third time.
If someone move, Councillor Danielson, second by Councillor Ryle. All in favor? It's carried. We close now.
No, we have one more bylaw.
Okay.
Be it resolved that bylaw, just hang on a second here. Yeah, one more bylaw.
Okay.
Be it resolved that bylaw 4313 being a bylaw to authorize an agreement with Kawartha Capital Construction for delivery of sodium chloride for the replenishment of road salt at the county patrol yards be considered to be read a first, second, and third time.
If someone move, Councillor Dennison, second by Councillor McKechnie.
4313 is what I have on my. Oh, my apologies. Okay, thank you.
All in favor? It's carried. Motion to go into closed. Carter and Councillor Ryle.
Carter and I'll read the motion. That in accordance with Municipal Act Section 239, Haliburton County Council enter into closed session for personnel matters about identifying individuals and the purpose of pending acquisitions, disposal of land by the municipality.
All in favor? Carried.
Do that in September.
Okay, good, thank you. Confirmation bylaw?
That bylaw 4314 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the August 27th meeting at Haliburton County Council will be considered first read and first, second, and third time.
Have someone move, Councillor Shell, second by Councillor Ryle. All in favor? It's carried. Adjournment?
That the August 27th, 25 meeting of Haliburton County Council be adjourned at 12 p.m.
Moved by McKechnie, second. Carter. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Thank you, council. Staff.